Hello, welcome to episode 14 of Taking Names. This is my playthrough of Elden Ring, and we're in Leyndell Royal Capital Legacy Dungeon. And it's taken a long time to get here, about 13 episodes. Now, I think just looking back at it, I think the views, or the YouTube views, have been a little bit inconsistent. So sometimes they're really good and sometimes it hasn't been so good. So what I might actually do is just finish up with this playthrough, because I do think that there's a lot of this playthrough content anyway on my channel. And then I want to focus on other content for Elden Ring, like a farming guide for the late game stage. Also, I want to update my bosses ranking now that I have finished the game, and also I want to write a review for it as well. So there are other things that I want to do here in this Elden Ring space. So if you've enjoyed these videos, make sure to hit that like button, also to subscribe to the channel for more Elden Ring content. But let's talk about Leyndell Royal Capital, because I was totally blown away by this legacy dungeon. It has so much ambition here that it really is hard to believe they really nailed everything. I just can't believe just the sheer size and scope of this, because it's so detailed and so well realized, both in its art style but also in the way that Souls games design their levels. And as you guys know, with Souls games, they have lots of intricate pathways through the level, and there's always a sense of being lost. And you know, the funny thing is that even though you're kind of right out in the open here in this city, you still are lost through the number of multiple pathways that you can have. So as I'm fighting here against 4 different enemies, I really have no idea which way I should run to, that it isn't a dead end. And but just behind me right here is a dead end, so I kind of didn't want to go there with 4 enemies. And I gotta say, I do not recommend fighting all of these enemies at once. It is always best just to kite each one at a time to fight them. The enemies in Leyndell are definitely a step up from Volcano Manor, so I wouldn't want to tackle Leyndell if you're a little bit under-leveled, say you're under level 80, because then I think that's going to be a source of frustration. One of the most beautiful things about Leyndell is there's multiple pathways, or more pathways, to get to the end of a level or to get to a site of grace than some of the other levels that you may have already encountered in the game. So I think that gives the players a lot of freedom in choosing which way they want to go. If they find one route too difficult, they may choose to go another route and still get to the end boss. So Leyndell is just super fun to explore in general. But my strategy through Leyndell was just to explore as much of it as I could, and that mostly meant just taking down every boss that I could find, or every sub-boss that I could find. So you saw there I was taking down the Erdtree Avatar, and now I'm tackling the Crucible Knight. Some people might not think the Crucible Knight is a mini-boss, although I would say that because you're only fighting him alone, that kind of makes him a little bit of a mini-boss, and he certainly is a pretty tough enemy to fight, and more difficult than your regular enemies. One interesting thing about Leyndell is, because it's such a large legacy dungeon, it seems as though From Software put as many bosses as they could possibly put into the level. Now I gotta say, if you're fighting the Lion Guardian one-on-one, he is definitely a difficult fight. So if there's any way that you can try to cheese him, like shooting arrows at him from a ledge, then you should definitely consider doing that. The Ulcerated Tree Spirit is also a pretty difficult boss, but ultimately it really depends on how over-leveled or under-leveled you are. So if you are under-leveled at any particular time, bosses are going to seem pretty difficult. But if you've been leveling up and doing as much content as possible, well, then the bosses are going to be easier for you. As I said in the beginning of this video, I was really amazed by the scope of this legacy dungeon. You start off right at the top of the city, where there's a lot of the higher classed areas before moving down into the lower classed areas. And what fantasy game is complete if they don't ask you to go into a sewer system of some sorts? And so Leyndell has got everything. It takes you right down to the bottom of the city and all the way back up to the palaces up the top. And that is so cool. This stone dragon wing that I'm currently running up to get to the palaces, I'm sure there's a really cool backstory somewhere about this dragon, though I didn't really come across it in the game material. And obviously that is part of Elden Ring and Souls games' charm, is that they don't tell you everything about all of the characters and enemies and locations. They want you to slowly piece it together throughout the game, and if they don't tell you, then it's kind of a mystery for you to work out. Now, one really cool, interesting mystery is that there is this complete replica of the round-hole table area. So I'm looking forward to working out what that's all about as well. Now, you know, From Software games love to have areas where you're going to be cheesing off the enemies, and I think this design here where this abductor version can't get through the door is From Software's acknowledgement that, hey, they designed these things on purpose. So I think that's really cool that they put that in there as well. Now, to get up to the top of the palace for the boss fights, you need to run up this tree, and the first boss fight is Godfrey, first Elden Lord, and he did take off a lot of damage there in that first hit, but overall he wasn't particularly that strong of a boss. And I guess I was just over leveled at this point, so I had been doing a little bit of farming here and there, but I also had a maxed out Mimic tier as well, and aside from getting a couple of hits in, the Mimic tier pretty much did 75% of the damage here and just made easy work of Godfrey. Now, I know a lot of people have said that a lot of these bosses are not very well designed, and I wouldn't say that entirely. I would say that all of these bosses were designed to be played solo, so a one-on-one boss fight, and so they were meant to be difficult if you're going to be playing them one-on-one, but if you're going to summon them, then they would be a lot easier. And I think they designed it that way because they wanted this game to be more accessible. They wanted more people to play this game. They wanted to make it easier for people to finish. And honestly, there is nothing difficult about this game if you use every tool available to you. If you are willing to farm, if you're willing to grind, if you're going to over level yourself, and then also use summons and use all of the items and everything in this game, it shouldn't be that difficult to finish this game. And I think that's what they wanted to make this game. They wanted to make it a game that was hard for veterans because they know the veterans are going to speed run through this game, and then they know that other people can solo this game if they want to, just doing it on a 1 versus 1 battle with all of the bosses, and for everybody else they can just use summons and all of the other aspects of the game to make it easier for them. So if people are asking for easy mode, well, there are many easy modes in this game, but there isn't a specific easy game setting. It's part of the game for you to discover on your own. I think that's really cool way of thinking about difficulty as well. So this is Morgott the Omen King, and he is very similar to Morgott the Fell Omen in Stormvale Castle. Morgott, of course, has different moves, but by this stage, 80 hours into the game versus when you played Morgott, which would have been about 10 hours into the game, you're going to have a completely different experience because now you kind of know how to play this game, and you're going to be able to fight a lot better than you did back then. So I think the fight here is easier. He might be harder or have a lot more moves, but I think because you've gained so much experience now, this fight is going to be easier for most people. And another thing that made it easier is that you can also summon a friend to help you. So here I've summoned Melina the NPC, and that made it a whole lot easier because I also could summon my Mimic tier. So there were 3 of us fighting Morgott, so he pretty much had no chance. But that's going to be it for this video. We are not very far from the end, so I do hope you join me for the rest of the videos. In the next video, we're going to be taking on Miquella's Haligtree, so make sure you're subscribed to catch all my videos, and I'll see you in the next one.